The shouting started before anyone knew what was happening. 2 police officers, voices raised, eyes sharp, surrounded a mother and her little boy. The calm of the park broke apart in seconds. Phones came out. People started whispering, recording, watching. In the middle of all that noise, she stood completely still. Her name was Elena Johnson, a 34-year-old black African-American woman with short natural curly hair, wearing a light grey t-shirt, denim jeans, and white sneakers. Beside her, her 6-year-old son Malik Johnson, barefoot, bright yellow cartoon print t-shirt and denim shorts, clung to her hand, confused and afraid. The officers' voices grew louder, orders layered over panic, and yet Elena didn't speak. Because sometimes silence says everything. Around them, the park shifted from peace to chaos. Sergeant Reynolds, tall and muscular with a short brown buzz cut, stood closest, his tone sharp and commanding, while Officer Clark, slim, with brown hair under a navy cap, watched nervously. A small crowd gathered, men and women of mixed races in summer clothes, some whispering, others shouting for answers, phones raised high. The warm afternoon light flickered through trees, catching faces full of confusion, fear, and curiosity. In the middle of the noise, Elena's calm felt almost unnatural, the quiet before something much bigger. The camera of life seemed to slow down. Elena Johnson stood tall but still, her curls moving gently in the breeze, her eyes steady and unreadable. Malik pressed close against her side. The officers' voices blurred now under the sound of murmuring spectators. Sunlight fell across her face, half in shadow, half in gold. That silence, in that moment, was louder than anything else. No one there knew who she really was, but they were about to find out. Elena Johnson wasn't a celebrity, a politician, or someone chasing headlines. She was a single black mom doing what countless mothers do every day, trying to give her child a small piece of normal. Her days were long and quiet, filled with early alarms, school drop-offs, and late-night paperwork from a job that barely paid enough. But she never complained. The park was her escape, a simple patch of green where she could breathe, laugh, and watch her son run free under the open sky. That Saturday afternoon felt like any other. The sun hung low, painting everything gold. Elena spread out a blanket, unpacked sandwiches, and listened to her boys' laughter echo between the trees. For a moment, the world felt kind again. But peace has a fragile way of breaking when people see color before character. From across the path, 2 police officers had stopped, hands resting on their belts, eyes fixed on her. She noticed the look. That familiar, uneasy mix of judgment and authority. At first, she tried to ignore it. Maybe they were just passing by. Maybe she was overthinking it again. But then they didn't move on. One whispered something to the other. Their radio crackled softly. And as they began walking toward her, slow and certain, Elena's heartbeat shifted, steady calm turning into something else. Because deep down, she knew this scene too well. She'd seen it in headlines, heard it in whispers, and felt it in the stories of people who looked like her. Only this time, it wasn't someone else. It was her turn. The officer's steps grew louder, crunching over the gravel path. Elena sat frozen for a second, unsure if she should gather their things or stay seated, because she knew either choice could be read the wrong way. Her son looked up, confused by the sudden tension in her face. She smiled, trying to make it look easy. "It's okay, baby. Just finish your juice." But her voice trembled slightly. "We've had a call about a suspicious person fitting your description," one officer said. His tone clipped and practiced. Suspicious. That word again. It never got old, just heavier. She blinked, trying to steady her breath. "I'm just sitting here with my son." But they didn't hear her. Or maybe they didn't want to. One officer gestured to her bag on the blanket. "Mind if we take a look?" It wasn't a question. Her hands tightened around her son's shoulders. "Is there a reason?" "Just doing our job," the taller one said, already reaching. Elena felt her pulse in her throat. People nearby had started watching, whispering. Some took out their phones, others turned away, pretending not to see. The world always had its spectators, but few witnesses. The younger officer opened her bag, scattering crayons, tissues, and a half-eaten sandwich onto the grass. Her son reached out to grab his drawing, but the officer's hand came down too fast, snatching it away like evidence. "Step back," he barked. She stood now, trembling but tall. "You're scaring my child." The officer's eyes narrowed. Lower your tone. And then, it happened. A movement so quick and ugly that even the air seemed to stop. A shove, a sharp exchange of words, and then a slap, clean, loud, and humiliating. Gasps rippled through the park. Her son screamed. For a moment, time fractured. Elena didn't cry, didn't yell. She just stared at the badge, the trembling hand that had struck her, and the people watching but saying nothing. Then came the radio call, a burst of static cutting through the silence. The officer turned away to respond, his voice shaking slightly now. Maybe he realized what he'd done, or maybe he didn't care. Elena knelt beside her son, whispering to calm him, to calm herself. But her eyes, they had changed. The fear was still there, but behind it, something sharper was beginning to rise. Because this wasn't the first time she'd been treated like she didn't belong. But it would be the last time she stayed silent. She stood again, slow and deliberate. One of the officers told her to sit back down. She didn't. The taller one reached for her arm, but she stepped back. Her voice, when it came, was calm, too calm. You should probably call your supervisor. The officer frowned. And why is that? Elena met his stare, steady and unflinching. Because, she said, pulling something from her wallet, you just assaulted a federal agent. The park went silent again. Only this time, it wasn't her who looked afraid. The taller officer froze, staring at the badge in her hand. The small gold emblem glinted under the sunlight. Federal Bureau of Investigation. For a split second, disbelief crossed his face, then panic. His hand dropped from his belt. The crowd that had been silent began to murmur, phones now raised higher, cameras capturing every second. Elena didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her voice, low and steady, carried more power than their radios ever could. You assaulted an FBI agent, and you did it in front of witnesses. The younger officer stumbled back, eyes darting toward his partner, then to the onlookers. The same crowd that had once pretended not to see was now watching every breath, every twitch. The roles had shifted. The hunted had become the one holding all the power. But even as she stood there, badge gleaming, Elena felt something deeper, a mix of anger, sorrow, and exhaustion. Because this wasn't victory. It was proof. Proof that the only reason she was now being treated as human was the metal in her hand, not the skin she was born with. The officers stammered out apologies, voices shaking, but it was too late. The humiliation had already been burned into her son's memory, into hers, and into the screens of every phone recording the moment. Then, as the supervising sergeant arrived, the scene shifted again. He took one look at the situation and went pale. He recognized her name, her face, and her clearance level. Suddenly, everything changed. Orders turned to apologies. Authority turned to fear. Elena didn't gloat. She simply looked at her son, his small hands clutching her sleeve, eyes wide with confusion. And as she lifted him into her arms, she whispered, "This is why I fight." Because behind every headline, behind every protest sign, there were stories like this, quiet, unfilmed, unseen. But this time, the world would see. And this time, silence wouldn't be an option. By the time the crowd dispersed, the sun had dipped low, leaving long shadows stretching across the park, the same park that had once been her sanctuary. The officers were escorted away for questioning. Statements were taken. Phones kept recording. Justice, at least in the public eye, had started its slow, deliberate crawl. But for Elena, justice wasn't about headlines or apologies. It was about what her son had seen. The fear in his eyes, the confusion, the moment his laughter turned into tears. That was the scar she couldn't file in any report. In the following days, videos of the incident spread across social media. Millions of views, thousands of comments, outrage, debates, and disbelief. Some called her a hero. Others tried to justify what happened. But none of it could erase the truth. Being an FBI agent didn't protect her from being seen as a threat first and a mother second. Elena returned to work, composed on the outside, but something inside her had shifted. She had worn the badge for years to protect her country, to uphold justice. Yet now she realized justice wasn't blind. It had eyes. And sometimes they refused to see. So she started speaking at schools, community events, and police reform meetings. Not about anger, but awareness. Not about blame, but change. She wanted people to understand that what happened in that park wasn't rare. It was routine. Only this time, the world noticed because she had a title. Others weren't so lucky. As she watched her son sleep one night, his hand still clutching the drawing that had fallen in the grass that day, she whispered a promise to fight until no mother had to explain to her child why their skin made them a target. Because the real power isn't in a badge, it's in the truth that refuses to stay silent. And maybe the question we should all ask is this: if justice only works for those with power, can we really call it justice at all?